The Telenari fleet emerged from folded space like a blade sliding between ribs. 300 warships, 40,000 soldiers, 12 siege platforms capable of cracking a planet's crust from orbit. Commander Vorik stood on the observation deck of the Sword of Destiny, watching the blue-white marble grow in his viewscreen. Earth, third planet of an unremarkable yellow star, home to a species that had barely crawled out of its own gravity 2 centuries ago. "The humans have detected our arrival," said Subcommander Thalon, her voice flat with routine. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, multiple languages. Should we jam?" Vorik's mandibles clicked in amusement. Let them talk. What could they possibly say that matters? The transmission crackled through the bridge speakers. A male voice, calm, steady, not the shrieking panic Vorik had heard from a dozen dying species. "To the commanders of the approaching fleet, this is Captain Elias Vance of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human territory. We request immediate communication to resolve this situation peacefully." Thalon's secondary eyelids blinked in surprise. Peacefully, they know we're an invasion fleet. Vorik stepped closer to the viewscreen. The human colonies on the outer worlds had fallen in 6 days. No resistance, no organized defense, just scattered civilian populations who offered no fight. He'd assumed the core world would be the same, weak, disorganized, waiting to be conquered. "Send our standard terms," Vorik said. "Unconditional surrender within 1 rotation, dissolution of all military command, transfer of all resources and territories to Telenari Authority. Non-compliance will result in orbital bombardment." The human response came faster than expected. "Commander Vorik, we've reviewed your terms. We cannot accept unconditional surrender, but we offer an alternative." A pause. "Your ships are damaged. Your supply lines are stretched across 300 light-years. Your soldiers are exhausted and wounded. We know this because we've been tracking your fleet since you left your home world. Let us help you." The bridge went silent. Vorik's blood ran cold. No, he stopped that thought before it finished. He was not cold. He was not shaken. He was Commander Vorik of the Telenari Conquest Fleet, and humans were nothing. "They're lying," Thalon said. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap." Vorik's claws scraped against his command console. "But what kind? What kind of species offers help to its invaders?" He ordered the fleet to hold position. Then he played the transmission again and again. Each time the human's voice remained steady. No tremor, no desperation, just patience, as if he had all the time in the world. That was when Vorik made his first mistake. He dismissed it. "Proceed to orbit," he commanded. "Begin landing operations. Crush their defenses." The Sword of Destiny moved forward. Behind it, 300 warships followed like obedient children. And somewhere on the surface below, Captain Elias Vance watched the fleet approach and whispered to his tactical officer. They chose wrong. The landing zone was a field of wildflowers. Vorik hadn't expected that. He'd expected bunkers, trenches, desperate civilians throwing themselves at his soldiers. Instead, his assault shuttles settled onto soft grass while children in the distance stopped playing to wave at the descending metal birds. "Commander," Thalon's voice crackled through his helmet comm, "we're receiving no hostile fire. No military presence detected for 80 kilometers. It appears the humans have evacuated." "Then where are they?" "Waiting for us." The landing ramp lowered. Vorik stepped onto Earth's soil, his environmental suit filtering the oxygen-rich atmosphere. Around him, 1,000 Telenari soldiers formed defensive positions, weapons sweeping across fields, forests, and the small cluster of buildings ahead. A human walked out to meet him. She was unarmed, no armor, no visible fear, middle-aged with gray-streaked hair and lines around her eyes that suggested she'd spent a lifetime smiling. She stopped 10 meters from Vorik and spread her empty hands. "Welcome to Earth," My name is Dr. Helena Reyes. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for this region. We've prepared food and water for your soldiers. We have medical supplies for your wounded. And we've set up temporary shelters if your troops need rest. Vorik stared at her. His translator worked perfectly. He understood every word. He simply couldn't process them. You're surrendering. I'm offering hospitality. Dr. Reyes tilted her head. Surrender implies we were fighting. We're not. We're surviving. And right now, your people need help more than we do. Thalen raised her weapon. It's a psychological operation. Don't engage. But Vorik held up a claw. He looked past the doctor toward the buildings. Through open doorways, he could see Telenari soldiers from the first landing wave, the ones who'd arrived 6 hours earlier, sitting at tables, eating, drinking, talking with human civilians who moved among them like nurses in a hospital. His comm channel erupted with reports. Across the planet, in every landing zone, the same scene unfolded. Humans offering aid. Humans asking no questions. Humans treating the invaders like lost travelers rather than conquerors. What do you want? Vorik asked. Dr. Reyes smiled. It wasn't a predatory smile. The phrase felt wrong in his mind. It was genuine, warm, and that terrified him more than any weapon ever could. We want you to leave, she said. But not because we defeated you, because you realize we're not your enemies. We never were. That night, Vorik couldn't sleep. He walked through the human settlement, watching his soldiers interact with the locals. A young Telenari warrior with a damaged leg, wounded during the colonial campaign, sat on a porch while a human child showed him pictures drawn in crayon. A supply sergeant shared rations with an elderly couple who'd brought fresh bread. This wasn't how conquest worked. This wasn't how anything worked. Vorik's comm device buzzed, a priority signal from the Sword of Destiny. Commander, we've received a transmission from High Command. Thalen's voice carried an edge he'd never heard before. They're ordering us to make an example of the human core worlds, to demonstrate what happens to species who resist. Resist, they're not resisting. Exactly, that's what concerns them. The order came down 20 minutes later. At dawn, the Sword of Destiny would target a civilian habitat in the northern hemisphere. 3,000 humans, non-military, non-threatening. Vorik looked at the sleeping settlement around him, at the soldiers who'd begun to laugh with their hosts, at the children who'd stopped being afraid. He should have refused the order. He knew that now. He didn't. The habitat burned for 6 hours. Vorik watched from orbit as flames consumed the structure. 3,000 lives reduced to ash and screaming that even vacuum couldn't silence. His sensor logs showed everything. Humans jumping from the upper levels rather than burn. A mother throwing her child to safety before the collapse took her. 200 survivors pulled from the wreckage by, of all things, Telenari medics who disobeyed orders to assist. The galaxy watched too. Every species with a listening station picked up the human distress calls. Every government received the footage. And every single one of them waited to see what humanity would do next. What they didn't expect was silence. Human ships stopped moving. Their colonies went dark. Their ambassadors withdrew from every diplomatic channel. For 3 standard cycles, Earth transmitted nothing but static. No demands, no declarations of war, no pleas for mercy. Vorik paced his bridge, claws scraping furrows into the deck plating. What are they doing? Thalen's voice was subdued. She'd been different since the habitat, quieter. Our intelligence suggests they're regrouping, preparing a counterattack. Counterattack with what? We destroyed their military in the first week. No, Commander, we destroyed their defenses. Their military is still out there. We just can't find it. That was when the first outpost vanished. Deep Space Monitoring Station Theta 7, 23 personnel. No distress call, no battle signatures. One moment it existed. The next, the Telenari network showed only empty space where a fully armed station had been. Then the supply convoy disappeared. 12 cargo ships, 4 escorts, all traveling through a well-charted trade lane, vanished between one sensor ping and the next. Then a colony world, 50,000 Telenari civilians, gone. Vorik demanded answers. His analysts gave him nothing. The ships hadn't been destroyed, there was no debris. The colonies hadn't been attacked, no weapon signatures. It was as if someone had simply erased his people from existence. Until he found the message. It arrived on his personal console, bypassing every security protocol. No encryption, no sender ID, just words. Commander Vorik, you asked what we wanted, we told you, we wanted you to leave, now we want something else. We want you to remember. Every world you've taken, every species you've broken, every child who burned in a habitat because you needed to prove a point. We know about all of it. We've been recording since the day you arrived. And now the galaxy knows too. Attached was a file. Vorik opened it, his blood no. He refused to let himself feel that. The file contained records, decades of Telenari war crimes meticulously documented by human observers who'd infiltrated his supply lines, his colonies, his own command structure. Dates, locations, names of victims, names of perpetrators. His name. The transmission ended with one sentence. Your empire ends not with fire but with truth. Vorik looked up at his bridge crew, at the soldiers who'd stopped meeting his eyes, at Thalin, who stood with her claws trembling at her sides. What? He demanded. Thalin raised her datapad. The galaxy's news networks had erupted. Every species was broadcasting the human files. Every government was demanding answers. And on a dozen worlds, Telenari garrisons were already being overrun by species who'd finally found their courage. They didn't need weapons, Thalin whispered. They just needed us to see ourselves. The empire fractured in 17 days. Vorik watched from his flagship as world after world declared independence. Not through violence. The humans had ensured violence was unnecessary. They'd given each species the one thing the Telenari had always denied them. The truth. Factory worlds rose up when workers learned their children had been sent to labor camps. Colony worlds seceded when settlers discovered their uninhabited lands had been stolen from native populations. Military units defected when soldiers saw their own faces on human broadcasts, standing over graves they'd been told never existed. And through it all the humans remained silent. No demands, no ultimatums, just the endless cascade of evidence spreading through the galaxy like light from a dying star. Commander, we've lost contact with the home world. Thalin's voice carried no emotion now. She'd stopped feeling days ago. Vorik gripped his command console. Explain. The human network is broadcasting directly into our civilian population centers. There's been civil unrest. The government has declared martial law, but the military is refusing orders. Half the fleet has gone dark. Dark. Gone, Commander. They've taken their ships and left. No destination, no explanation. They just stopped wanting to fight. Vorik turned to his sensor displays. His fleet had started with 300 ships. Now fewer than 80 remained. The rest had either deserted or been recalled by worlds that no longer recognized Telenari authority. And somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, the humans were waiting. They didn't wait long. The human ship appeared without warning. No fold signature, no approach vector. One moment empty space, the next a vessel of angular gray metal, smaller than a Telenari frigate but built with a brutality that made Vorik's soldiers step back from their displays. A transmission followed. Commander Vorik, this is Captain Elias Vance. We've met before, though you never responded to my first message. I'm here to repeat it. A pause. Surrender. Stand trial for your crimes against sentient life, or continue running. Those are your only choices. Vorek's mandibles clicked in defiance. You're one ship. I still command 80 warships. 80 warships with failing life support, depleted fuel reserves, and crews who haven't slept in a week because they're afraid of what they'll see when they close their eyes. Your empire is dead, Commander. Your soldiers are already gone. All that's left is you. Then destroy us. Prove to the galaxy that humans are no different than we are. The human sighed. It was such a tired sound, such a human sound. We're not going to destroy you, Commander. We're going to wait. Your ships have food for another 10 days, water for 8. Your wounded are dying because you don't have medical supplies. Your soldiers are asking each other why they're still fighting. How do you know all of this? Because your people are telling us, because they're done dying for an empire that never cared if they lived. Another pause. Commander, we've spent 3 centuries watching species like yours. You always think mercy is weakness. You always learn otherwise. The question is how many of your people have to die before you do. Vorek looked around his bridge. At Thalon, who wouldn't meet his eyes. At the sensor operator, whose hands had stopped moving. At the young soldier by the door who was crying, actually crying, because she just watched her home world declare independence from the species she'd sworn to serve. He opened his mouth to give the order to attack. And then he stopped. Because for the first time in his life, Commander Vorek realized he didn't want to be the monster in someone else's story. The trial lasted 3 months. Vorek sat in a chamber built by human hands, on a space station constructed from salvaged Telenari materials, under the watchful eyes of 100 species who'd come to witness history. The humans hadn't demanded execution. They hadn't demanded revenge. They demanded something far worse, accountability. Every victim had a voice. Every atrocity had a witness. Every Telenari commander who'd ever given an order to fire on civilians, to burn a habitat, to erase a species. They sat in the defendant's chamber, their claws bound not by chains but by the weight of what they'd done. Vorek was the last to testify. The prosecution calls Commander Vorek of the Telenari Conquest Fleet. He walked to the witness stand. No guards escorted him. The humans had removed his restraints 3 days ago after he'd given them his word he wouldn't flee. They'd believed him. That still surprised him more than anything. Commander Vorek, said the human prosecutor, a woman with gray hair and calm eyes. On the day your fleet arrived at Earth, you received a transmission offering peaceful resolution. Why did you refuse? Vorek's mandibles clicked. Because I didn't believe you. Didn't believe what? Didn't believe you were offering help. Didn't believe any species would do that. Didn't believe. He stopped, swallowed. Didn't believe kindness could be real. And after you destroyed the civilian habitat, after you killed 3,000 people who'd offered you food and medical aid, what did you believe then? Vorek looked at the prosecutor, at Dr. Helena Reyes, because of course that's who she was, the same woman who'd walked out to meet him in the field of wildflowers. She'd survived the habitat fire. She'd pulled 12 children from the wreckage. And now she stood before him not as an accuser but as a witness. I believed I'd made a mistake, Vorek said. One mistake. Every mistake, every decision, from the moment I saw your world and decided it belonged to me. He turned to face the gallery. To face the representatives of species his people had nearly destroyed. I am guilty, not of following orders, not of doing my duty. I am guilty of choosing cruelty when kindness was offered, of believing that strength meant taking rather than giving. The chamber was silent. Dr. Reyes stepped closer. Commander Vorek, the humans are not asking for your execution. We're asking for your testimony, your cooperation, your help in rebuilding what your empire destroyed. She paused. We're asking if you want to be better. Vorek felt something break inside him. Not his will, that had shattered months ago. Something deeper. something he'd buried beneath centuries of Telenari military doctrine. "What's the catch?" he asked. "There's no catch." Reyes spread her hands. "That's what you never understood. We don't help you because we expect something in return. We help you because you needed help, because every species needs help sometimes, even the ones who have forgotten how to ask." The sentence came down the next day. Not death, not imprisonment, restitution. The surviving Telenari commanders would spend the rest of their lives rebuilding the worlds they'd destroyed, working alongside the species they'd tried to erase, learning, day by day, what it meant to be part of a galaxy that didn't run on conquest. Vorik accepted the sentence without argument. But as the guards led him from the chamber, he stopped at the door, turned back to Dr. Reyes. "The other species," he said, "the ones who watched us fall, what do they think of humans now?" Reyes considered the question. Then she smiled, that same genuine, terrifying smile from the field of wildflowers. "They think we're dangerous," she said. "They're right, but not for the reasons you think." The last battle wasn't a battle at all. Vorik stood on the bridge of a human medical ship, watching sensor displays that showed the remnants of the Telenari fleet. 15 ships, 3,000 soldiers, all that remained of an empire that had once stretched across 1,000 worlds. They'd refused the amnesty, refused the trials, refused every offer of surrender the humans had extended. Instead, they'd gathered at the edge of known space, on a dead world with no strategic value, and they'd sent one final transmission. "We will not kneel, we will not be judged. Come and destroy us or leave us to die on our own terms." The human fleet waited at the system's edge, 50 ships, enough firepower to turn the dead world to dust, but they didn't move. "Captain Vance," Vorik said, "why aren't you engaging?" Elias Vance stood at the view screen, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked older than he had during the first transmission. Thinner, more tired, but his voice carried the same steady calm that had unnerved Vorik from the beginning. "Because they want us to destroy them. They want to die as soldiers, as martyrs. They want history to remember that they never surrendered. So we're not going to give them that." Vance turned from the view screen. "Commander, how long can their ships maintain life support?" "Without resupply, 8 days, maybe 10. "And how long can they maintain the will to fight?" Vorik considered the question, looked at the sensor readings, at the desperate, exhausted signatures of 15 ships that had nowhere left to run. 3 days, maybe fewer." Vance nodded. "Then we wait. We don't fire, we don't approach, we just stay here, offering surrender on every channel, reminding them that we're not their enemy, that we never were. And if they attack, then we defend ourselves, but we don't pursue, we don't destroy, we disable and capture. Every soldier who survives is one more who might choose differently tomorrow." It took 5 days. On the 3rd day, 2 ships powered down their weapons and signaled surrender. On the 4th day, 5 more followed. On the 5th day, the flagship, the last vessel, commanded by a fanatic who'd sworn to die rather than submit, turned its weapons on the human fleet and fired. The human response was surgical. Precision shots disabled the flagship's engines, its weapons, its communications. Boarding parties secured the bridge within minutes. The commander who'd sworn to die was found in his quarters, weeping, his claws wrapped around a ceremonial blade he'd been too afraid to use. Vorik watched the footage, watched human soldiers offer water to their prisoners, medical aid to the wounded, food to soldiers who hadn't eaten in 4 days. "What kind of species are you?" he whispered. Dr. Reyes appeared beside him. She'd been on the medical ship the whole time, ready to treat survivors from both sides. "The kind that remembers," she said, "not the kind that forgets." "The other species, the ones watching this battle, what do they see?" Reyes gestured to the view screen, where human and Telenari soldiers now sat together in the medical bay, bandaging each other's wounds. They see a species that could have exterminated their enemies and chose not to. A species that had every right to be cruel and decided to be kind instead. She turned to face Vorik. They see the scariest thing in the galaxy, Commander. They see mercy with teeth. The last Telinari commander, the weeping one, the one who'd sworn to die, was brought before Captain Vance an hour later. He was young, younger than Vorik had expected. His claws were broken from clawing at his restraints. "Kill me," he demanded. "No," Vance said. "Then I'll kill myself." "No, you won't, because we won't let you, because you don't get to escape what you've done. You don't get to die and leave the rest of us to clean up your mess." Vance crouched down to meet the commander's eyes. "You're going to live. You're going to work. You're going to spend every day for the rest of your life looking at what you helped destroy and asking yourself if it was worth it. And if I refuse, then you'll sit in a cell until you change your mind. We have time, Commander. We have nothing but time." Vance stood. "That's the thing about humans. We're patient. We're very, very patient." The young commander broke then. Not his body, his spirit. He collapsed onto the deck plates and wept like a child, and Vorik watched, and he understood for the first time what Dr. Reyes had meant. Mercy with teeth. It was the most terrifying weapon he'd ever seen. 20 years later, Vorik walked through gardens that hadn't existed when he'd arrived. The Telinari home world had been a Chinese letter place. Industrial, gray, built on conquest and maintained by fear. But the humans had brought seeds, soil, species of flowers that had gone extinct on Earth centuries ago, preserved in genetic vaults and replanted here as a gift. Children ran through the gardens. Human children, Telinari children, children of a dozen other species who'd come to this world to build something new. Commander Vorik. He turned. Dr. Helena Reyes stood behind him, older now, her gray hair turned white, her eyes still carrying that patient warmth that had terrified him so long ago. "Just Vorik," he said. "I haven't been a commander in 2 decades. "Old habits," Reyes smiled. "I came to say goodbye. They're recalling me to Earth. New crisis, new species making old mistakes. Will you offer them mercy too?" "Of course, that's what we do." Vorik watched the children play. Watched a human boy teach a Telinari girl how to throw a ball. Watched her mandibles click in delight when she caught it. "The other species," he said. "The ones who watched us fall, what do they call humans now?" Reyes considered the question. "Depends on who you ask. Some call us builders, some call us fools, some call us the most dangerous species in the galaxy." She paused. "But most of them call us something else." "What?" "Home." She left him then, walking through the gardens toward a shuttle that would take her back to Earth. Vorik watched until she disappeared from view. Then he turned back to the children. A Telinari elder approached him. One of the survivors, not of the war, but of the Empire. Someone who remembered what the galaxy had been like before humans showed up. "They're leaving," the elder said. "They'll be back." "Do you think they'll always come, when we need them?" Vorik looked at the children again. At the human boy and the Telinari girl, still playing, still laughing, still learning that their differences didn't matter. "Yes," he said, "because that's what they do. They come, they help, they forgive." He paused, "but they never forget. And if we make the same mistakes again, if the Empire rises from the ashes..." Vorik thought about Captain Vance, about Dr. Reyes, about the thousands of humans who'd chosen kindness when cruelty would have been easier. "Then they'll stop us again," he said, "but not because they hate us, because they love this galaxy too much to let us destroy it." The elder nodded slowly. "The young ones," he said, gesturing at the children, "they'll never know what we did, what was done to us. They'll only know this." "This is enough," Vorik said. And it was. Years later, when Vorik was old and the children of the gardens had children of their own, a young Telinari asked him a question. He'd heard the stories, the legends, the whispered warnings that passed from generation to generation. "Grandfather," she said, using the human word because the Telenari had no equivalent, "is it true that humans could have destroyed us?" "Yes." "That they chose not to?" "Yes." "Why?" Vorik looked out at the gardens, at the flowers that had crossed the void between stars, at the children who played without fear, at the sky where human ships still patrolled, still watched, still waited to help anyone who needed it. "Because," he said, "they knew something we didn't. They knew that mercy isn't weakness. Mercy is the strongest thing in the universe. It's easy to destroy. Anyone can do that. But to build, to forgive, to look at the species that tried to erase you and say, let's start over." He paused, smiled, a human expression he'd learned from Dr. Ray's decades ago. "That takes a kind of strength most species never find. The humans found it, and they never let it go." The young Telenari was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, "What do we call them, the species that saved us?" Vorik looked at the gardens, at the flowers, at the children, at the sky. "We call them humanity," he said, "and we remember, every day. For as long as our species exists, we remember what they did for us. Not because they demand it, because they deserve it." He stood up, his old joints protesting, and walked into the gardens. His granddaughter followed. "Grandfather, one more question." "Of course." "What's the most important thing the humans taught us?" Vorik stopped, turned, looked at his granddaughter's eyes, so full of curiosity, so full of hope, so full of a future that wouldn't include conquest or cruelty or any of the things his generation had taken for granted. "They taught us," he said, "that every species deserves a second chance, even the ones who don't think they do, even the ones who have forgotten how to ask." He reached down and picked a flower, one of the earth flowers, brought across the stars by human hands and planted in soil that had once been poisoned by war. "They taught us that kindness is a choice, not a weakness, not a strategy, a choice. And they taught us that choosing kindness, every day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, is the bravest thing any living being can do." He handed the flower to his granddaughter. "Now go play. The humans will be back soon. They always come back." She ran off, laughing, and Vorik watched her go. Watched her join the children of a dozen species in a garden that shouldn't have existed, on a world that shouldn't have survived, in a galaxy that should have destroyed itself 1,000 times over. But it hadn't, because humanity had been there. And humanity had remembered.